Technical Advisory Committee meeting for it is now 9:04 on Thursday, August 14th. So we will go ahead and just go through introductions. I'll just call the names as they appear on my list. Things might jump around a little bit, so if I forget everyone, we'll go back and everyone will have a chance to introduce themselves. And I do want to say, so we're just meeting quorum here for this meeting. Definitely shouldn't take the full 2 hours. We'll probably wrap up within the hour. But if you do have to leave early for any reason, if you would go ahead and let us know, that would be great. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Hannah Oden. I'm a planning manager at PAG. And I'm just going to go down the list as the names appear. So feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself. So the first person on my list is Brian Cow.
Hi, I'm Brian Cow with Kimberly Horn.
Thanks, Brian. And then we'll go to Chris. Steve.
Chris Stevie, the University of Arizona.
Thanks, Chris. And then Davida.
Hi, Davida Mueller, Centran.
Thanks, Davida. And Falana. And Falana, I see you're unmuted. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. We can see you, but can't hear you. But thanks for joining. Give you another second there. Still can't hear you. You're with PAG, so thank you for joining. And then Nalo.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nalo with the town of Sarita.
All right, thanks, Nalo. And then Ian Sansom.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Ian Sansom, Project Manager, City of Tucson, Department of Transportation and Mobility.
Okay, thanks for joining, Ian. And then Lisa Schaefer.
Good morning, everyone. Lisa Schaefer, Town of Marana.
Thanks, Lisa. And there is a bit of an echo on your audio, just to let you know, but thank you for joining. And then Mariate.
Good morning. This is Mariate Echeverri. I'm the planning manager for the project from Kimberly Horn.
Okay, thanks, Mariate. And then Michael Alexander.
Hello, Mike Alexander, Town of Oro Valley Transit Administrator.
Thank you, Mike. Monica Landgrave.
Hi, good morning. Monica Landgrave with the City of Tucson. Thank you.
Thanks for joining, Monica. And then Preston.
Morning, everyone. Preston McLaughlin, Transportation Manager here at PAG RTA.
Thanks, Preston. And then Samuel Paz.
Good morning, everyone. Samuel Paz, Pima County DOT.
Great. Thanks for joining. Then we also have our admin support and IT team. So that's Bree, Issa, Jeff, Jesse. I think John might be on as well. But yeah, they're all keeping us going and make sure that everything is working as it should during this meeting. Names are jumping around a little bit, but was there anyone I forgot or anyone I skipped over for introductions? Feel free to just unmute yourself if so. All right, so we will go on to the next agenda item, which is the in-kind form. So I'll just go ahead and read this. So regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. So if you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. All right, and we'll go on to the next agenda item, which is the project fund report presentation and discussion. So I want to thank everyone for your participation throughout this entire project and process. We are nearing the end here with the draft final report and wanted to share just the key findings, the recommendations, and information about the final contents of the study. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mariachi for her presentation.
Thank you, Hannah. Oh yeah, I was trying to find the the little clicker for the slides. So as Hannah mentioned, we are kind of in the final stages of the study. You have seen kind of the evolution of how this has gone, but since the last meeting we had in March, there were some changes to the the things that we were considering based on your input, and we want to revisit that so you see which changes were incorporated and which changes were not. And then there were some other elements that were developed, like the Title VI, and equity analysis, the air quality analysis, and then the final recommendations and implementation. So we'll go over this and get your comments. So last time we went into Tucson when we talked to you, we were preparing for the second phase of the public engagement. We had a very robust second phase, and it was successful. We had, among the different things that we did, we had meetings with you guys, with the technical committee, and also with the PAG technical group. And we had a pop-up event at the Green Valley Library. We had several pop-up events at the transit center, similar to what we did last time on the first phase. And we hosted many different focus groups to try to gather information about all the zones that we were proposing and things that we perhaps had left out. And here you can see some of those focus groups that were considered. So this is a summary of the key takeaways. One of the things that we heard from you is that connectivity to fixed route was very important, and of course we had several discussions about how the zones were defined, and you gave us different ideas that were later explored, and Brian is going to talk about that. On the community focus groups, we heard from Vail that they wanted and consider important to include the school districts in the boundaries. We have several meetings with Oro Valley to determine kind of the value of the microtransit for the community, and what things would be important to consider during the implementation. We met several times with a couple of different groups from AHO, and they are really excited about the potential of this new service. AHO is one of our best performing dial ride zones right now. So they are very excited about it. HO Rocks in general has been very supportive, and they are in great need of having some sort of transit service that connects to main activities. And in general, some of the comments that we heard and input that we received is that it was important to link the microtransit zones to destinations outside of the zone just because of access. So to provide access to health and education and job opportunities. So that was considered in the final design of the zones. And that it was very important to provide alternatives for the vulnerable population. And we talked to several different social services agencies through the duration of the project, and that seemed to be the case for all the zones that we consider. And during the pop-up events, we heard, and this has been something that we heard from the beginning, is that the community is very supportive of a service similar or equal to Microtransit, and that one of the things that they are most excited about is the same-day service and weekend and Sunday service when that is not offered. So Brian is going to talk about the simulations and the service opportunity zones, some of these things, kind of the stats you have seen similar things, and he's going to highlight what is different and what is the same.
Yes. Cool. So hi everybody, Brian Cow here. But yeah, just wanted to also provide an overview and review of like the simulation process again. And kind of talk about, yeah, some of the inputs and outputs that come into that as well. So this is just kind of an overview slide of talking about all the different factors that go into our microtransit simulation. We are looking at how all of these different variables play with each other. And out of this simulation, we could get an understanding of performance metrics such as vehicle requirements and wait times. And this also feeds into some of the later analyses that we are doing, such as estimating cost benefit, and also air quality, which we'll talk about later. But if we go to the next slide, this map will show all the 13 zones that we are recommending as part of this study. Some of the zone boundaries have changed since we last presented to this group, and I'll talk about that later, but just as an overview, we have divided the zones into two categories as part of input to the simulation. We have our weekday service zones, which tend to be our more rural, less dense zones, and so which will have lower expected ridership, and our extended service zones that are a little more urban, a little more dense, and a little higher expected ridership. And so these categories are only really meant for the simulation as an input. They differ in kind of the quality of service that they provide, but these aren't like set in stone. If we choose to do implementation later down the road, we can definitely still play with these variables and tweak the service parameters to fit the specific needs of the community. And I also want to highlight at this stage that all of these zones have external destinations attached to them that are like points of interest that are still important to serve even though they are outside the zone, and I'll discuss that later. And I also want to highlight that all of our zones connect to at least one or more fixed route transit services, just to make sure that the service still provides mobility and accessibility to travel outside of these zones. If you go to the next slide, this is the differences between the weekday and the extended zones, as I was talking about earlier. The major difference here is just the target wait times. So the weekday service, we are designing about a wait time of about 20 to 25 minutes with a maximum of 60, while our extended zones have a shorter target wait time of 10 to 15 minutes and a maximum wait time of 30 minutes. And then the other difference is that our weekday service zones are designed to only have service on weekdays, while our extended zones will also have Saturdays and Sundays as well, as long as a slightly longer service hours, about 1 hour more in the morning and then 2 hours more in the evenings. But everything else about the zones are the same. We are not assuming that we are going curb to curb on all of the trips. And then we are also assuming that minivans will be operating the microtransit service. If we go to the next slide, here is an overview of the projected ridership attached to each zone. And this list is sorted by the ridership. So we have a low, medium, and high ridership scenario for each of the zones. This is because there is a lot of variability. It's really hard to predict the future, but this range will capture what we expect is ridership to be. That medium scenario there is kind of our best estimate, but we do recognize that transit service is currently free in all of Pima County, and if fares will return, it will probably push it a little more towards the low end of our ridership projections here. But all in all, I think, yeah, just capturing the range and the variability and projected ridership. If next slide, please.
Sorry, it's not moving for some reason.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's not working. Oh, there
Oh,
it is.
here we go.
Yeah.
Nice. And so this is kind of the summary slide of all the different outputs of our simulation process. As I mentioned before, one of the biggest outputs is that fleet size. We want to know how many vehicles we need to serve all of that demand without kind of surpassing that target wait time that we defined earlier. And some other things I want to highlight on this table are some of those key performance indicators that kind of tell us how efficient the service is, and just that performance of like quality of service. So talking about them individually, productivity, which is defined as boardings per revenue hour. This is kind of the measure of just how efficient the service is at, and we want higher, the higher the better for productivity. The average wait time, this is used as kind of a confirmation of whether or not we have the right amount of vehicles to serve the trip demand. Average trip duration, which is how long passengers spend in a vehicle on average. This is more controlled by like the size of the service areas that we are drawn and kind of the trip demand that is within those zones. And our operating cost per trip is kind of that measure of cost efficiency. So just like the financial side of operations. Next slide, please. Okay, so from now on, I'm going to discuss the final opportunity zone boundaries that we have drawn up for this study, talking about if they have changed since we last presented to this group, and kind of some characteristics that we found in each of the zones. Starting off with our Marana Ever Valley zone. This is an existing Sun Shuttle Dial-A-Ride zone, and so the zone boundaries are unchanged from that. But we did identify that there are a couple outside locations, such as the Tucson outlets and the Arizona Pavilion Shopping Center, where it's important for people to be able to connect to. So no changes on this zone since last time. Next slide. This is our Picture Rocks zone covering the community of Picture Rocks. This one also had no changes from last time we presented this group, still connecting to the Tucson outlets and the Arizona Pavilion Shopping Center. And there are many fixed route transit connections from those locations as well, so that people could travel further. Next slide. This is our Tortolita Continental Ranch zone. This one we did modify as from the feedback received in public engagement. This zone covers the Tucson Premium Outlets, Arizona Pavilions, and the Foothill Mall, kind of those major trip generators and the neighbors in between. Originally, this zone went more north, kind of closer to Dove Mountain, but based on public feedback, we heard that the Continental Ranch neighborhood to the west of the freeway is also very important to serve, and they have no existing transit service there. And so what we did is we extended the zone that way, but then we also cut the zone kind of to the south a little more, just because that north part of that Tortolita area is a little dense, less densely populated, but we do recognize that it could be a potential future expansion of service. For our Oro Valley zone, this one is unchanged. The zone boundaries, this is an existing Sun Shuttle Dial-A-Ride service area, and so the zone boundaries are exactly the same as that. Next slide. Our Casas Adobe zone is also unchanged. This is one of our smaller zones, but also because it's small and compact, but pretty densely populated, it is pretty well performing. Our Catalina foothill zone is also unchanged, just covering those northern neighborhoods to the Tucson core. And yeah, no changes were made to this zone. Our Tanque Verde zone also saw no changes. But yeah, just covering those neighborhoods as well. Our Rita Ranch Savano Little Town zone did change. Originally, we drew up this zone to mostly cover the Rita Ranch and Savano neighborhoods following the Sun Shuttle 450 bus route. But from public feedback, we did hear that the Little Town neighborhood, which is just directly adjacent to the zone, has a limited transit service. And so we wanted to expand the zone to also cover that neighborhood. Our Vale zone, so covering the neighborhood of Vale, this one we did hear from public feedback that there are some surrounding neighborhoods that could also benefit from extended transit service, such as the Rocking K community to the north of the zone and Corona de Tucson to the southwest of the zone. However, when we ran the simulation on kind of this expanded area, the size of the zone was just getting a little too large to be efficient. We were seeing that wait times were really high, and so we would need a lot of vehicles to service all that demand. Because it wasn't very cost effective and the performance wasn't as high at this stage of this, we would recommend to just kind of stick to the Vale community itself, with a smaller compact zone, just to make sure that we still maintain that service quality. But a future expansion of the zone is definitely still possible, depending on after implementation. Our Tucson Estates, Drexel Heights, Valencia's West zone is unchanged from last time. But yeah, this is one of our bigger zones, but it covers a lot of destinations, and yeah. Our West Tucson zone is designed as a expansion of the Sun On Demand microtransit service that is existing just more towards the west to cover some of those neighborhoods that have less transit access. No changes on this zone from last time we presented. Our Sahuarita Green Valley zone is an existing Sun Shuttle Dial-A-Ride service area, and we've made no changes to that service boundary for this study. And last but not least, our Ajo and Y zone. Originally, we drew up this zone just to cover the community of Ajo, which is an existing Sun Shuttle Dial-A-Ride zone. From public feedback, we heard that it was very important to connect to the neighborhood community of Y, and that also the casino that is next to Y is a major trip generator in the area. So we've brought down that zone down, extended that zone over. And what we found is that the vehicle requirements don't really change, which is good. And so that is all the 13 zones that we studied as part of this study. I'll hand it back to Mariette to talk about Title VI.
Thank you, Brian. I think before we move forward, are there any questions or comments? I know that we gave you a lot of information, and so if you have anything right now, we can just make a pause. Yes, Michael.
So yeah, up in your initial PowerPoints said the focus groups, focus group just being the different areas, or focus group as you spoke to people in these areas?
So the focus groups were different. We put together many different focus groups. One was actually in Oro Valley. We had one in Vale as well. We have a couple of them, or two in Vale, with a couple of them in Picture Rocks. So yeah, it was distributed across the area and involving different stakeholders.
So you actually spoke to riders, say in Oro Valley, during that time frame.
Community members in Oro Valley, yes, that group was Oro Valley helped us putting that group together. I see Hannah coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to that real quick. So we had employers from Oro Valley Hospital, Walmart, I think a hotel as well, resort, and then a couple members from the community as well that were involved in the general plan process who were specifically involved in the transportation side of things. So I worked with Oro Valley staff to get those contacts from the Community and Economic Development Department.
So it sounded like you said that you spoke to businesses.
And there were citizens as well.
Okay. And they came away with that same day service is not a priority at this time?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. So if they're saying that same day service is not a priority, is there anything that would change your numbers on your estimated if that was put into place? Is it saying that weekday ridership for this for low would be 80? So that is that still a 80 is still a good number, even though people are not interested?
So what we did was to analyze Oro Valley under the microtransit lens. So everything in the analysis involves same-day service. And then if these zones go to implementation, it's going to be up to Oro Valley and the PAG to determine how that is provided. But the analysis here is specific for microtransit service, if microtransit were to be implemented. And microtransit, one of the principles of microtransit is to be able to provide the same-day service because you increase the level of service. So that's an important feature to keep.
So that goes back to my question. If you interview different people and they said microtransit or same-day service is not a priority, how are you going to get 80 trips a day if nobody really wants it?
I could speak to that. So the simulation process, the inputs to that are mostly going to be population, jobs, and points of interest, and also just land use. So, but we do realize that, yeah, there is variability that, and so that's why we wanted to provide a range in that ridership projection, just because it is, we can't predict at this stage of what exactly that ridership is going to be. I will say that that part of like whether or not like feedback from that focus group doesn't directly go into the simulation process. That's not something we can model, but hopefully that range in ridership values will kind of capture that variability in the projection.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, Brian, because there are two different things. One is the data and another thing is the community engagement. So those two things move the process forward. And as I mentioned, if it's up, and I think this is something that was discussed with Amy from Oro Valley, and I believe you were there in that call as well, that if Oro Valley we'll look at all of these and determines if this is something that you guys want to follow through.
Right. Well, I understand that, but I was just commenting on the interviews you had, saying it's not something that most people want, but yet we still estimating at least on a low side of 80 trips a day. That seems a lot if people don't want it. So just I guess a comment.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. And if you think of anything else, we can just return to it. So one of the tasks in the study was to perform a Title VI and equity analysis. We look at the policies that are in place for PAG. The Title VI policy says that any change in revenue hours or revenue miles over 25% will trigger the Title VI analysis. And then so some of these changes trigger those thresholds. So we went through all the zones and all the changes proposed, and it was found that the changes do not exceed the cumulative threshold. So that means that there are no impacts to the community in a significant way. Even when there may be changes in how the service is provided. And also, we think that with Microtransit, the redundant transit service is something that will mitigate any hardship that may come from a change in type of service or the elimination of some of the routes. Are there any questions here? And this follows the process that is established by FTA, so it's a very prescriptive process. All right. We also did air quality analysis, and for this analysis, we looked at the vehicle miles traveled with the reduced and added zones for microtransit, with the changes for dial ride, and what happens in terms of the use of buses and private vehicles. We look at the baseline scenario for the vehicle miles traveled and the future scenario with the implementation of microtransit and the reduction of routes, and then determine the emissions for all of this. And the result is that when we look at the cost benefit analysis, there is something that is called the social cost of the emissions. And in general, all these changes will produce a kind of an additional cost of $78,000. This is because even when we are removing cars from the roads, more people are using transit services. The microtransit model produces many trips because they are shorter trips. So that adds to the equation. In some cases, in this analysis, for instance, for Oro Valley, the social cost is reduced, and for Marana, the social cost is also reduced. But when we look at the entirety of the county, the social cost increases by $78,000. I know this is a little bit confusing, but I think that the main topic here is that there is that additional social cost. Yes, Michael.
So the way I see this, and maybe you factored this in or not, but the more riders you have, well, the only way to reduce this is to have more riders on existing routes.
Yep.
So if you add any type of route, so you're saying that the at least 5 new vehicles for this microtransit, the employees getting from home to work, all the deadhead miles is going to counter all the rides that they're doing?
No, I'm not saying that it's counter. What I'm saying is that because of the microtransit model and all the different segments that are considered, there is an increase in the social cost. There is also one factor to take into consideration, and is that in many cases, there are many trips that are not being made right now because there is no access to transit. So when you have more trips being made, that will also add to the equation. So that's why this is kind of it has an impact on the cost of the carbon emissions.
Okay, well, the way I see that, if someone drives from their home to, I don't know, grocery store, that's all they drove. Versus us taking them, our driver our employee got to work. He drove from our office to their home. So all of that was just for that one trip. So there's a lot of extra that goes into that. But what I'm seeing here is that there's going to be less. Because
No.
in Oro Valley, it's less.
Oh yeah, for Oro Valley it's less. Yeah. And for Sahuarita too. I'm sorry, I missed that one.
But that's why I'm kind of not understanding this. There's going to be more emissions out on the roads because all of the travel with no people on the bus. It's going to happen. It happens every day. So anytime you drop off your passengers and you have to drive to the next location with no people on the bus, that's just added emissions.
Yeah, and that is
someone that drives from here to there.
Yeah, and that is considered here in the equation.
Yeah.
And so because microtransit trips are shorter trips, your deadhead your deadhead miles are also shorter. The idea is to be pairing trips one after the other, and you have, in the case of Oro Valley, because it's a more dense area, you also have more vehicles, so you can keep all of that kind of going one after the other. Also with microtransit, is seen across the nation that people really like microtransit because there is more accessibility, even when they may not know exactly what it is. Once they know that they can schedule trips 20 minutes before and the same day, all of that is very appealing to the rider. So when people understand how microtransit works, it begins kind of be more efficient because you have more trips.
Yeah, I'm thinking the only way you're going to decrease air quality kind of stuff is riders on existing routes or existing buses, not adding any new ones.
But this is no routes. This is microtransit. Microtransit
Right.
on
Yeah.
one route.
So basically you have someone sitting around doing nothing and then they get a ride and then off they go and pick up their rider.
Yeah, that is considered in this equation.
Correct. So adding another driver, I think it said almost 2 per hour in our zone. 2 in 1 hour creates a lot of idle time. So
Okay.
but that's why I'm just trying to figure out how you got all this information. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is considered. We look at all the vehicle miles travel, and Brian, maybe you can talk a little bit about how those are determined, but also, and the air quality analysis is also a very prescriptive analysis. So it follows a set of formulas, and those were all taken into consideration when determining this social cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's a comparison here made between like existing, like if people were to drive directly versus getting picked up by microtransit. And then there's also a comparison here made to if the existing dollar ride zones were to be replaced with microtransit. That is also a comparison we made as part of this analysis. One of the assumptions we do make is that the vehicles will be operated using minivans, whereas currently I believe a lot of the Sun Shuttle services are operated with cutaway shuttles. So there is a change there associated as well in terms of like the air quality from changing vehicle types as well. But yeah, there's a lot of factors that kind of get taken into account as part of this analysis.
Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna move forward. So we began looking after all this work, how to implement these services. And Brian mentioned this briefly before. We have kind of the near-term services, the medium-term, and the long-term. And when we look at the operating cost, and these operating costs are based on the medium scenario. And when we look at the discontinued services, this is looking at dial right and the fixed routes that are being replaced. This is the total that we see. For some reason, I cannot see my entire screen. My screen. Okay, there. Oh. Yes, so the total cost of implementing microtransit in a 10+ year scenario is 10 million. And this is for operations. Then on the capital, having some technical difficulties here today. Sorry, it's not moving my slides. Let's move it this way. Okay, there. I think there is a lag. On the capital cost, we took into consideration also in terms of the scenarios, the number of vehicles that are going to be needed for each one of the facings, and then the total. And this, as Brian mentioned, this is considering microvans. So the cost of the capital cost is $2 million, 2.2. And then we enter in the report in a discussion of how to implement microtransit. So there are several things that all of you on the PAG are going to need to consider if you decide to implement microtransit. One is the service model. There are several service models. One is the transportation as a service, and the other one is the service software as a service. And what this means is that, and it can be hybrid too. So many agencies use a turnkey model where they contract out the service to a company that provides the software and provides the vehicles and provides everything. But some other prefer to buy the vehicles and just contract out the operation. Some other just want to get the software and then they operate the service. So that's something that will be determined at a later date. In our report, we make the recommendation to continue with at least for the PAG and the RTA services, to continue with the turnkey model, just because it's going to be easier just to give it to the current contractor or to contract out with a different provider than bringing operations in-house. In terms of technology, there are many apps out there that help providing microtransit service. One of the keys for success for microtransit is to have easy access to the technology, so people can directly from their phone schedule their rides. But also it is important when considering the technology that there are options for people that don't have access to technology. So keeping the call centers and staffing the call centers is super important to make sure that the microtransit service can really serve everybody across the county. In terms of fares, we didn't consider fares for the analysis, as Brian said, just because you have been fare free for a while. But if fares are considered, then it is recommended to keep it in line with all the other services as not to produce any disparities. And looking at best practices in the implementation of microtransit services, marketing and outreach and education is very important, because people need to understand how the system operates, the benefits of having, the being able to schedule a ride 20 minutes earlier, schedule the same day, having shorter trips. So all of that needs to be transmitted to the customer. So marketing and outreach is really important. The agency coordination and partnerships, all of you continuing working together to provide transit service would be key, especially that there are different providers in the area, and making sure that those integration points are kept is going to be important. And also to be able to react to changes that need to happen as you implement the service. On the funding piece, currently there is a number of funding mechanisms that are available to the area. I understand that there is a referendum that is gonna, and I don't recall, Hannah, if that's going to happen next May or this November. I don't remember what the schedule is.
As of today, spring of next year, but things are a little in flux depending on the RTA board.
Thank you. So that's something that is going to play a big role as you consider implementation. If RTA next passes, then the region is going to have some availability of funding to be able to, along with other funding sources like Section 5307 of the FTA will be important. And finally, on these considerations, one element that has worked very well for other agencies is to begin small. So begin with a pilot project in an area that can be contained, and that you can observe how the community reacts and how the community receives it. Has proven to be a good tool just to gauge the potential success of the microtransit. Any questions on these items here? Yes, Michael.
I'm sorry, I'm taking over your stuff here.
Oh no, it's good. It's good. I'm glad that you have things.
So you were just talking about making sure that you keep your same service, correct? So people aren't confused on, did I hear that right?
No, what do you mean?
I thought I heard you say to keep the same type of service, and you're just going to add.
The service model, the turnkey service model, turnkey.
Okay, so the service model, and then add the microtransit.
Yeah, so so I don't know if you're familiar with the turnkey element. I don't remember how Oro Valley is operated, but I believe it's turnkey. Turnkey is when you contract out all the operations, and in some cases you also contract out kind of the capital portion of the service. So RTA currently has a turnkey contract, and what we are recommending is to keep the turnkey model for the Sun Shuttle piece of the microtransit.
Okay.
In the case of Suntran operates their own microtransit, if I recall well. So it's going to be depending on, if Oro Valley wants to move forward with microtransit, also looking at those service models would be important. But it was specifically referring to how Sun Shuttle is operated.
Okay, so then back up on the implementing Microsoft and the operating costs. What are you talking about when it says discontinued services?
So let me go back. So there are different things. Yes. So we have, in some cases, we have dial-a-ride that is going to be replaced by microtransit, right? And in some other cases, we are discontinuing 3 routes that are being replaced by microtransit. We are proposing to remove 413, 430, and 450. And so that's what it's referring here to.
Okay.
Yeah. So because we are kind of making a comparison, I mean, a cost analysis, it is important to see kind of what is already available, so you know how much additional funding is going to be needed for the service. Right. And I wanted to also show you a little bit of what a typical roadmap for implementation looks like. And we consider 4 elements in the implementation: the planning, design, the procurement process, and operations. And so this gives you kind of an idea of how long it would take to implement microtransit. And there are many things that can work concurrently. For instance, the planning, selecting which area, which zone you want to implement, and then begin determining the service model, if you want to do the turnkey or if you want to do the software as a service or any other hybrid option, determine if fares are going to be charged, and then kind of going through the procurement process. Even if you are using the contractor that you have already in place, that takes some work. You need to work the contract, you need to make amendments to the contract, etc., etc. Procuring the vehicles, if the vehicles are not available right now, and hire additional personnel if needed, and then of course printing everything that is related to the marketing and outreach. And then on operations, identifying who's going to provide the service, and this is all kind of maintenance, security, developing the handbooks, and so on. So in kind of in general terms, expedited microtransit project could be in place in about 10 months. So this gives you kind of an idea of what is needed. Any questions here? All right. So the next steps, we are right now finalizing the revisions to the final report. We submitted a final copy to the PAG, and now we are just doing some revisions, and then that's going to be produced as a really nice final report, and then it's going to be done. Any questions, any comments from anyone? Yes.
So I just want to confirm where we're talking about in the terms of Oro Valley, because that's where I'm from. So you're talking about the discontinued services, possibly removing some of the fixed routes in the area, and the Sun Shuttle. So you're basically spoke to the people along INA corridor, because that's where that fixed route is, and then Sun Shuttle and Sun Tran is not necessarily Oro Valley Dial-A-Ride.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, and what is, so in Oro Valley, what what we are considering is replacing the dial ride with microtransit. That's the comparison there.
So the Oro Valley dial-a-ride is not part of that. It's the Sun Shuttle dial-a-ride.
Is that a question, or are you making a statement?
No, that's a question. So that in your operating
Oro Valley,
costs, in your
Oro
operating,
Valley, Oro Valley doesn't have Sun Shuttle dial ride, right?
Oh.
It's just Oro Valley.
So
Oro
the
Valley.
only cost that is in that discontinued services column for Oro Valley is just the transition from the existing dollar ride to a microtransit service model.
Okay, then I don't understand what your microtransit versus the dial-a-ride is. The only thing I understand it is currently Oro Valley dial-a-ride takes their reservations the day before, and you're saying that if we go to same day service, it's going to change.
Yeah.
So you're thinking that all of our service should go to same day?
So this study is looking at what would be if your dial ride becomes microtransit. That's what we are looking at.
So then you're changing our reservation day out in advance to same day.
Yes, but that's only if Oro Valley wants to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. I mean, it's, it's the feasibility, what it might look like, should that service, if that was the desire of the community and of course the elected officials to go towards microtransit service. This was, kind of the first step to see what that might look like, ridership, considerations, things like that.
Yeah.
So we get roughly 300 trips a day now, but you're saying if we change it to be a same day service, we would only get 80?
I don't have the existing conditions right in front of me. But we can look into that to see. Yeah.
And I think, so just to provide a little bit more context, Oro Valley has ADA paratransit dial-a-ride, and then they have general public dial-a-ride. And you were just looking at the general public dial-a-ride, the dial-a-ride that's open to the public currently in Oro Valley, right? You weren't looking at the paratransit dial-a-ride. That wasn't a factor in the calculations.
Yeah, thank you, Preston, because I was thinking if that 300 number has ADA as part of it.
Yeah. It would just be the general public side, not the ADA side.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
That seems now the operating cost seems quite high for 80 trips a day for just general public. But that's my thought. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, the cost is the cost. We are not challenging the number. Is microtransit. Microtransit has a purpose. It can be expensive if you have a big density of trips. Then microtransit is not it's not the solution. But we saw through the analysis that based on the density that the region has and the kind of the characteristics, then microtransit is something that could work, which is kind of the entire purpose of this study, is to determine if microtransit could work in these areas. And that's all this is saying. Microtransit could work. And we are just giving you kind of the data that you need to consider if you decide to move forward with microtransit. Or if anyone else in the region decides to move forward with microtransit. Any other comments or questions? right, so that's all from us. Hannah, I don't know if you have anything else.
No, I don't think so. Yes, it looks like we still have quorum. So if there's any other questions, yeah, Preston, I don't know if there was anything, any other thing that you wanted to add, but yeah, if there's any other questions, feel free to give it another second here. But yeah, really appreciate everyone's time.
Yeah, nothing from my end. Thanks, Hannah.
Sure, thanks, Preston. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other hands up or anyone unmuting themselves. So I know that was, oh, go ahead, Davida.
Can we get a copy of the presentation at the end here? And I'd like to get more information on those areas that affect Suntrans service. Specifically the west side, because you've expanded the area, and also right now Sunvan provides all the paratransit along Houghton corridor for the 450, and we'd really like to know how that correlates with the microtransit.
Yeah, absolutely. The meeting slides will be posted online, and the meeting's been recorded, so I'll follow up with the links to both. And Davida, we can definitely follow up offline separately with those questions. But yeah, well, I'll be mailing or emailing everything out to everyone in the meeting.
I appreciate that, Hannah. And when you send that to me, would you include Ian and Monica, please?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Anyone? All right. So we will go ahead and move on. Adjournment. So again, I know that was a lot of information. Thank you, Mariate and Brian, for presenting on the report. So yeah, again, everything will be emailed out. I'm happy to follow up if anyone has any additional questions or comments. But we'll go ahead and move on to the adjournment. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything else, any other questions or anything else you can think of. Really appreciate all your involvement throughout this entire process. We've been meeting for quite a while, so I appreciate your involvement and your feedback throughout the process. And we will, of course, share the final report when it's done. So thank you again for joining, for your time, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.